Welcome to the course on writing research papers. Hi, I'm Judy, and I know that hearing "you have to write a research paper" are not words you want to hear. Having an assignment to write a research paper may be in the same category as a dentist telling you that you need a root canal. Neither will be painless, but each can be made less painful when having a positive attitude and knowing what to expect. This course shows you the logical steps and provides examples to help you write that A-plus research paper as painlessly as possible. All the way from when you have no idea what to write about to producing that high-quality, well-researched, well-organized, well-supported, easy-to-read final project. I believe there's something in the course for everyone, whether you are writing your first research paper or have written multiple ones. Tips, guidelines, and examples are provided, all the way from getting started to supplementing what you already know. So let's begin on the research paper journey. You can get the most from this course by first recognizing that writing a high-quality research paper needs to be approached in steps or stages. A process must be followed. Trying to write a research paper in 1 3 or 4 hour block of time is impossible. There are no shortcuts to producing a high-quality research paper of which you will be proud. This course will help you understand the writing decisions that will need to be made and to anticipate potential barriers, so you can take steps to either avoid, if possible, the problem areas or at least to minimize them. The writing process is emphasized in every writing course. And as with any process, enough time needs to be allowed for each step or stage. The analogy that writing a research paper is like a marathon rather than like a sprint race is frequently used, and that is so true. It's time-consuming, it doesn't always go smoothly, and can even be painful at times. But understanding and applying what needs to be done before, during, and after will help you run that research writing race. The lessons in this course will help you realize the importance of managing your time throughout the entire process. Also, all 3 of the pre-writing methods are discussed and illustrated. So one of the course benefits may be helping you decide which of the methods works best for you and your learning style. And then you'll learn how that pre-writing stage will help you prepare a structured outline, the one from which you'll write. Another beneficial course takeaway is how the parts of the process fit together all the way from choosing a topic to turning it into a final project. We'll look at how you can select a research-worthy topic and how to turn that idea into a strong thesis statement, and then how to select research to support that thesis. How much, how to find it, what sources are credible, and how to document those sources. Then and only then are you ready to write. And finally, the course will emphasize the importance of the revision process. Formatting choices will also be evaluated. To get the most from the course, you have to be willing to commit to the time and effort that are required, step by step. Finally, to get the most out of this course, begin with a positive attitude and keep visualizing the finished product, that A-plus research paper. Throughout this course, we'll be looking at a research paper on homeschooling and public schooling. First, a couple disclaimers. The final paper, a persuasive paper in favor of homeschooling, is used as an example. I have no bias for or against public school or homeschool. Secondly, the research facts and figures used are generally accurate, but some of the sources and authors listed are examples rather than actual sources. One other thing to note is that even though this final paper will be an example of a persuasive paper, the topic lends itself to the other types of research papers discussed in the course. Descriptive, for example. Most of the research could be used to just describe a homeschooling environment and a public school environment. Or compare and contrast. The research would also lend itself to comparing and contrasting the opportunities and challenges of homeschooling and public schooling. Cause-effect. If you were assigned a cause-and-effect paper, again, the research for this topic could be applied to analyzing the causes or reasons families choose to homeschool or to use the public school system and the effects, short-term and long-term, of homeschooling and public schooling. The homeschooling and public schooling topic provides the majority of the examples. However, additional topics or ideas will be used to analyze specific key points and for variety. The final paper will follow the MLA formatting and documentation style. However, all three of the major styles are discussed and illustrated in the course. Different instructors, institutions, and businesses assign or prefer different styles. Always check to learn which style you should use. So, we're ready to follow the writing process, from a vague idea to the final paper. Research. Even the thought of it can be intimidating. How do I find the right research? How do I know if I have enough research? How do I know if the research is credible? Or once I find it, how should I incorporate it into my paper? How can I avoid plagiarizing if I use someone else's sources? All of these are valid questions and concerns. First, consider that we research every day. Not as formally, of course, as we do for a research paper, but we might compare and contrast clothing brands, or we might classify restaurants by types of food or by prices. How would we get that research? Probably by talking to people who have personal knowledge, maybe by looking at online reviews, by making personal visits to the restaurant, or hands-on examining the clothing items. Why is researching clothing brands or restaurants important? After all clothes have the same basic function and all restaurants have food for sale. Research is crucial because it can strengthen any argument, can add depth to the discussion, and can help eliminate a personal bias. It gives credibility to what you're saying, and your research paper is more interesting to read with facts and statistics and quotes. Which of these two paragraphs about the importance of sleep would you choose as being credible, interesting, and objective? We all need sleep, but sometimes we stay up too late doing other things. I know I can't miss my favorite television program that comes on at 10 p.m. Not getting enough sleep can cause mental and health problems. Everyone needs to find a way to get enough quality sleep. Or this one. There's never enough time to get everything completed and get enough sleep. We have to answer email, do laundry, study, and watch that special television program. One possible solution is to sleep less. However, research shows that people are more likely to succeed at all those other tasks and be healthier if they get enough sleep. 2/3 of Americans say they lose sleep because of stress, and losing that sleep creates more stress. For example, less sleep results in more anxiety, impaired memory, and even increased heart disease. And the more we worry about these issues, the less sleep we get. Setting a regular bedtime, having a daily exercise routine, and reducing the amount of caffeine can all help in getting enough of that all-important sleep. That second version is more detailed and specific. It's more interesting and more credible and objective because it is supported by research, not just the writer's opinion. Research papers are strengthened by facts and statistics, quotes from experts, and major and minor detail to add depth. This research can be secondary research from books, articles, and other reports, or primary research, such as a survey you took or an interview you conducted. A research paper's purpose may be to describe a vacation, for example, or to classify different types of vacations, a cruise versus a leisurely family road trip versus an outdoor adventure. You would need to research what the vacation included and maybe even use your own experience having taken one of those vacations, primary research. Or if the purpose is to persuade a reader on a controversial topic, such as raise the national age for getting a driver's license, you'll need to research accident rates by age categories, insurance rates, and driver education courses. Or if your paper's purpose is to illustrate the best method for a process, such as advertising campaign for a new small business owner, you would need research on advertising in general, the cost of different advertising methods, and the demographics of the target audience. Maybe your purpose is to show a cause effect, such as better time management skills equal more productivity. You would need research examples of companies or individuals' testimonials of how better time management resulted in increased productivity, and stats on how client follow-up and resulting sales increased after time management training for the sales staff. Whatever the paper's purpose, length, or topic, research is necessary to increase your credibility as a writer, to make your paper more engaging, and to strengthen your paper's purpose. What did you see? What did it smell like? How did it sound? What did it feel like? Could you taste it? All of those questions you would answer if you were describing something, whether a person, an event, or a place. You want to describe something so completely and so effectively that your reader can see, hear, smell, feel, and taste what you've captured in your mind. Describing by your senses helps your reader get a clear impression of your mind's keen image. Maybe in a science lab you have to describe what you see through the microscope. Or in a business you might need to describe your product's characteristics to a client. Maybe you need to produce precise case notes. Whether you have a school assignment or a business situation, describing has general guidelines. Let's assume you've been asked to write a descriptive paper or essay. You may have unlimited choices. If so, you know that the writing process requires that you choose a specific topic, one that has enough variation and elements to describe. Choosing a fork, for example, probably would not lend itself to too much of a detailed description. So let's choose a recent boating outing on your favorite lake. Now the challenge is to figure out the best way to describe this boating adventure so your readers' senses can see and hear and feel and touch and taste through your words. Continuing that writing process will involve some type of brainstorming list. Since the purpose of your paper is to paint a mental image for your reader, close your eyes, visualize, listen. Maybe your list would include some of these images: bright blue water, eagle circling, colorful life vest, a raccoon on the shore. And the list would continue. Look at the list and decide on a logical descriptive order, a spatial arrangement, for example, from what is close to what is far away, or the opposite, far away to close, top to bottom or bottom to top, side to side. Or first decide what you see, then what you hear, and how the food tasted. Or maybe a combination. But you must determine the order of presenting your description. Otherwise, the reader will be confused. For example, we could begin with the ducks surrounding the boat, seeing animals on the shore, and then types of birds in the air. Or inside the boat, the life jackets, the towel, and the picnic basket. Then outside the boat, ducks and other boaters. And then on the shore, a raccoon and people picnicking. A chronological order might also work. A logical time sequence. Put the boat in the water, pull kids in large tubes, relax, and have picnic. Regardless of the organizational pattern, you will need to compose a thesis and topic sentences, and have an introduction, body, and ending. The paragraph ideas need to connect, and each paragraph needs to meet the definition of a paragraph. The specifics for those parts are discussed in other portions of this course, so let's discuss areas unique to descriptive writing. One of the important aspects to remember about a descriptive paper is to use language that appeals to the reader's senses. For example, don't just state, "It seemed to take forever to actually get our boat on the lake. When we finally did, the ducks followed us." Elaborate on what you saw, that picture in your mind. Even though we were impatient as we waited for dozens of boaters trying to load and unload boats at the ramp, having a duck greeting committee made the wait worthwhile. After waiting about 30 minutes for our turn at the hustling boat dock to unload our burgundy and white 20-foot pontoon into the almost 11,000-acre lake, we were finally on the water. As we kept our speed to 5 miles per hour until we passed the orange buoys, the challenging, demanding vocal choir of a couple dozen ducks that surrounded us kept our attention. As we watched the ducks show, their brown and yellow and green feathers looked oily as they preened or furiously pedaled their webbed feet. That second version paints a picture for the reader. In the first example, words such as forever, boat, and ducks were vague. Each person will see or define those words differently. It's the writer's responsibility to allow the reader into his mind. Adjectives and adverbs are the parts of speech that describe. In the second example, 30 minutes, hustling, burgundy and white, 20 foot, 11,000 acres, orange, challenging, demanding, vocal, couple dozen, brown, yellow, green, oily, furiously webbed. All of those words describe and work together to paint the picture. Will your readers see your mental photograph? They will. if your description has effectively appealed to their senses. We've all tried to convince someone that our viewpoint is correct. You may have even argued with that person, raised voices, angry looks, clenched fists, but that's not the image we should have for an argumentative paper. Even though some of the experts differentiate between the persuasive paper and the argumentative paper, we'll use the terms interchangeably for this discussion. The purpose of both is to convince the reader that the writer has a valid point, to look at the other side, and to organize the persuasive elements in a clear, logically supported pattern. In college, an exam question that makes a statement and then asks if you agree or disagree is asking you for an argumentative response. If you ask for a raise, you'll want to support the request with specific facts: increased job responsibility, high-performance job reviews, higher productivity. In other words, you are arguing with concrete evidence. Argumentative, persuasive papers use logic and reason, rational thinking, to show that one side of a controversial topic is stronger, and ultimately to persuade the reader to agree with the writer's position, or at least to think about some of the other side's points. Any sound argument is supported with solid evidence, facts, specific examples, and authoritative expert opinions. As with all research papers, you have to know the purpose of your paper, follow the writing process, research, so you can include those specific and convincing evidence, decide on the best structure, that organizational plan, write a thesis in topic sentences, have an intro, a body, and an ending, include effective transition, and cite all sources. Additionally, for the argumentative persuasive paper, you need to test your theses. Look at this possible thesis. Students should continue to be taught cursive in elementary school. Can another thesis that directly opposes that one be written? Students should not continue to be taught cursive in elementary schools. Using should in one and should not in the other shows that the topic is argumentative. Next, understand the opposing side of the issue, sometimes called answering the opposition. You have to know the counterpoints to your argument so you can acknowledge and refute them. Practice arguing for the opposing side to help you determine holes in your logic and research. Anticipate objections and react to those objections before the reader has the opportunity to say, yes, but. If you make the statement, students should not continue to be taught cursive in elementary schools because they don't need it anymore, and stop, someone might immediately counter with, yes, but it helps young students build their motor skills and teaches them patience as they finally conquer making those swirls and loops. Rather than giving the reader the chance to say, yes, but, present and counter that opposition. You could write, while some argue that teaching cursive writing helps build fine motor skills and patience in elementary students, most students rarely use it because it's been replaced with the convenience of word processing. Additionally, support your view with rational evidence. According to fourth grade teacher Carissa McLean in an article on the Texas Teacher Association website, children typically learn cursive in the third grade but rarely use it. Additionally, the College Board indicates that 82% of students abandon cursive altogether. Note the personal experience, the authority, the example, the expert, and the fact. Rational evidence to back up the argument. You also need to avoid first-person pronouns, giving your opinion, and using unsupported emotional language. Instead of writing, "I don't think cursive should be taught in elementary school, it's just a waste of time," write, "Since 82% of all students choose to use word processing rather than handwrite an essay, cursive should no longer be taught in an elementary school." Any claim you make must be supported by solid evidence, which requires in-depth, detailed research. Finally, consider if your intended audience has any biases. Knowing that information will help you decide on your organizational plan. For example, if you're trying to persuade a highly skeptical parent-teacher organization that cursive should not be taught, you might begin with your strongest argument, most important to least important pattern. If your audience is composed of those who are borderline on whether to support the Common Core standard of removing cursive from the curriculum, you might begin with a chronology of cursive, perhaps to show that its original purpose is no longer valid. So, if you want to persuade your reader to accept your point of view, think like your reader, do your research, and follow all the general research paper guidelines, as well as the ones specific to argumentative writing. When we compare, we look at how things are alike. When we contrast, we look at how things are different. Your writing assignment might be to compare or to contrast, or to compare and contrast. Here we're going to look at both comparing and contrasting in general, so you'll have the overall information for whichever assignment you're given. Been offered a couple jobs? You certainly would want to compare and contrast the salary for each, benefits, hours, driving distance, and advancement possibilities before deciding which to accept. Or you have a job and your employer wants you to compare and contrast the benefits of buying or leasing company cars. You would research the advantages and disadvantages for each, and then compare and contrast them. In history class, you may be asked to compare and contrast some aspect of World War I and World War II, or two poets in your literary class. Regardless if you're comparing and contrasting for a personal reason, for a job undertaking, or a school assignment, certain guidelines need to be followed. Part of the planning portion for this specific paper is to decide if you should tell the reader everything about one job option or one poet, and then in the next section everything about the other option or poet. If this arrangement is chosen, the main topics using the job situation example would be Job 1, then the categories would be salary, benefits, hours, distance to drive, and advancement opportunities. Then Job 2 would be listed with the same subsections. Or should the paper switch back and forth by key points? This arrangement is usually called point by point. If so, the main topics would be salary, benefits, hours, distance to drive, and advancement opportunities. Under each of those 5 topics would be Job 1 and Job 2. Look at this example, the first 3 categories. Presenting all the information about each option in the first example allows the reader to get a complete individual picture clearly in mind. The disadvantage is that if a lot of information is presented, the reader may not be able to remember the specifics without having to return to each section. Comparing and contrasting by categories, point by point, is easier for immediate comparing and contrasting. On the other hand, a summary of all the information about each option may not be easy to find. Comparing and contrasting is necessary in a variety of writing situations. Each step and stage of the writing process needs to be followed, but also consider these additional concerns for this type of paper. Let's look at how we could brainstorm to compare and contrast Edgar Allan Poe and O. Henry using the Venn diagram. First, label one circle, Edgar Allan Poe, and the other O. Henry. Then, based on what your research has revealed, you can put likenesses in the middle where the circles overlap. You could include that both wrote short stories, both are American authors, both were impacted by their mother's death, and they both died in their 40s. Then list in the outer circles for Edgar Allan Poe, wrote in the first half of the 19th century, style was dark and mysterious, wrote The Raven and Telltale Heart. O. Henry, in the opposite circle, wrote in the later half of the 19th century, used clear writing, was known for twist endings, and wrote Gift of the Magi and The Ransom of Red Chief. Certainly more research would be necessary, but that's a start. The thesis statement would need to indicate clearly that the authors are being compared and contrasted as in this example. Although both Edgar Allan Poe and O. Henry are 19th century short story writers who were impacted by their mother's deaths, their styles were vastly different. The paper could have a main section on the early lives of each. This segment could include one or more paragraphs on when they were born and their mother's deaths. Then a major section on their styles, and to what their different styles can be attributed. A third major section could include a couple of their famous stories, comparing and contrasting the storylines. Traditional expressions to help guide the reader in this specific type of paper to contrast are however, although, on the other hand, and while. Also, both, like, and similarly would be used to show comparisons. Look at these couple examples that show how those transitional words are used for similarities and differences. Both Edgar Allan Poe and O. Henry were born in the 1800s, although Poe was born in the early 19th century and Henry in the second half. Like Poe, Henry also wrote short stories. However, Poe's writings were known for their darkness, while Henry's were known for their twist endings. Even though writing a detailed comparing-contrasting paper may not be as easy as the infamous apple-orange comparison, the process is the same and can be made easier by creating a visual display showing the likenesses and differences and developing a clear thesis. Every effect will have one or more causes, and every cause will have one or more effects. You may be asked to write about the results, the effects of some specific cause, or you may be told to analyze what caused a certain result, the result being the effect. You'll have to explain what happened or predict what will happen and why. A cause-effect situation may be as simplistic as what caused the car to stop. It ran out of gas. Or what was the result of not putting gas in the car? It stopped running. However, in order to research and write a cause-effect paper, the situation must be much more complex, one that is likely to have perhaps multiple causes and effects. Common words used in this type of paper include causes, reasons, and factors for the causes, and outcome, results, and consequences for the effects. The paper's topic may be one to analyze the major causes of one major effect, such as, why is Alaska such a popular cruise destination? In other words, what are the causes or the reasons? Or you may be asked to examine the effects of some happening. For example, the consequences of autonomous cars that drive themselves becoming popular in the next decade. In other words, what will the effects be? Some situations will require you to look at both short-term and long-term effects. And remember to look at both positive and negative effects. Here's an example of research-based causes and projected future effects for the popularity of Alaska as a cruise destination. The causes: untouched wilderness, beautiful scenery, glaciers, being able to view wildlife and ocean creatures, images from advertisements, a desire for a different adventure. The effect: increased visitors to Alaska. Further predicted effects: short-term, increased revenue, destroying some of the wilderness scenery, environmental concerns, disturbing the wildlife, and more businesses opening to accommodate tourists. Even though there may be multiple reasons for people choosing to take a cruise to Alaska and multiple effects of self-driving cars, limit your major points depending on the assigned paper's length. Too many points may confuse your reader. As with any research paper, effective organization is a necessity. You will need a thesis, body paragraphs, each having a clear topic sentence that gives one of the reasons or causes, and effective transition between each cause or effect. Cause-effect research papers are among the most complicated types of papers to write, so be sure to revisit the major points and the overall idea of your essay to be certain you've tied together the key points for your reader. The cause-effect paper has some unique concerns. Be sure not to confuse the cause and effect. In theory, they are easy to separate, but in actuality, they may not be as clear. For example, is the reason self-driving cars are being developed caused by the fact that increased driver inattention and distractions are causing increased accidents? Or are they being developed as the result of, or the effect from, wanting to reduce accidents from driver inattention? Don't jump to conclusions. Also, be careful not to oversimplify. Everyone will want a self-driving car, so selling them should be easy. Even though how well they sell may be one of the cause-effect elements, much more research and deeper thinking need to happen before making that concrete statement. Also, be careful to research thoroughly until you find a pattern of causes or effects. One example or one person's opinion does not equal valid research. One engineer said that one of the benefits of self-driving cars is that there will never be any more accidents. That statement probably comes more under wishful thinking than concrete support of the effects. Cause or effect, short-term or long-term, positive or negative. This type of paper is sometimes identified as one of the most important kinds of papers to be able to write. Why? Because it helps you develop an analytical thinking pattern that can be used in school, on the job, and in life in general. All of these positive effects are based on one cause, being able to produce an effective cause-effect paper. What's the research paper's topic? Sometimes deciding what actual topic to research can be one of the most challenging parts. Sometimes you're given a specific topic. For example, compare and contrast right and left brain learning characteristics, or evaluate the causes and effects of fad diets. Other times you may be given a general idea or topic and be asked to narrow that general topic. The assignment might be as broad as research some current controversial topic that interests you, or maybe a little more defined. Research the characteristics of one of the 4 generations in the workplace. In those cases, the broad topic must continue to be narrowed. Even if the topic is more specific, such as the causes and effects of fad diets, it still needs to be narrowed. A quick search of that topic shows over 4 million results, with titles such as Spotting Fad Diets and 10 Red Flags for Fad Diets and The Danger of Fad Diets. The titles continue with The Truth Behind Fad Diets, The Real Genius of Fad Diets, and even The Lemonade Fad Diet. Obviously, you won't be able to research and discuss every aspect of fad dieting. So you have to know how you will go about narrowing the topic. What about that even more general, controversial topic that interests you assignment? Think about each of those 2 parts, controversial and of personal interest. Controversial, so it has to have at least 2 views, each of which will have researchable support, and something you're interested in. There's probably only one thing worse than having to write a research paper, and that is having to write one about something you have no interest in. So at least with this general topic assignment, you can choose something you may actually enjoy researching. Have you had a debate recently with a friend about something you feel strongly? You couldn't agree on whether college athletes should be paid, for example. Or think about what's in the current news. Maybe you heard an ongoing debate about homeschooling versus public schooling. Maybe you're having to make a personal decision that research might help making that decision easier, such as whether to accept a position that requires job sharing or one that allows telecommuting. Maybe you heard a news report on how baby boomers and millennials interact in the workplace, and you decide to focus on millennial characteristics. A caution is to choose a topic about which you have no strong biases. If you're already strongly convinced that college athletes should not be paid, for example, then no amount of research will probably change your mind. And because you are closed-minded about the topic, you're more likely to find research that will support your bias rather than research the topic objectively. Another caution to consider is to think carefully before choosing a highly controversial topic. Our views on abortion, gun control, politics, and religion, for example, usually align with our value system, making them hard to research objectively. You might look at some general library collections, such as taking sides and opposing viewpoints, or look through your current textbook for some area that you would like to know more about. The avenues for selecting your topic are numerous, but whichever topic you ultimately choose, you will have to limit its scope, brainstorm about what to include, and outline the paper's basic organization and structure before beginning to write. The first round of general research helps you decide on your idea to develop. The next round of research will help you continue to narrow the focus or the specific direction of your topic and help give you a deeper understanding of that topic. Let's assume, based on your preliminary reading, you decide on the general topic of homeschooling. So now the serious research begins. But where will you find additional information, and how should you evaluate and select from among all those sources? Various research methods are available. Your ultimate goal is to have a variety of the best sources, the most credible ones. Using only one or two sources or using multiple sources from only one or two authors reduces the credibility of the research paper. Who are the experts? What information is current and how were the data collected? Is the information in reputable magazines and journals? Does the writer or researcher have any biases? Often our first inclination is to Google the topic. Googling may help us get started, and some of the sources may be valid, credible ones. However, be careful. Learn to evaluate the source. Any site that ends with .com is a commercial site. Its aim is to sell something. Another source that is viewed with skepticism is Wikipedia. In fact, sometimes research paper writers are told to avoid using Wikipedia at all. The main reason is that information can be changed at any time by anyone. Because the researcher has no way of knowing the credentials or biases of those adding to or deleting from the research, it is not considered a credible source. For example, this site could provide valuable information, but you would recognize that one purpose of it is to sell something. .org is a nonprofit organization that's promoting a cause. In this example, even though we see the words U.S. government, the actual site is .org, so a cause is being promoted and it isn't a government site. .gov is a governmental source that provides public information. This example is an actual government source. And this one identifies that some information is available at Indiana University because the .edu identifies an educational institution. Even though research collected from the .com and .org may be looked at with some skepticism, they may provide some valid sources. Just remember to evaluate each one. A site such as this one can help you analyze your source. It provides a checklist to help you evaluate categories such as authority, accuracy, objectivity, currency, and coverage. If you have access to an educational institution's online resources, you will be able to find more credentialed research. Universities usually pay to provide their students with online library sources. So far, the research discussion has focused on secondary research, sources that someone else has written. You might also consider incorporating some primary research into your paper. Conduct an interview with an expert or someone who is directly involved with your topic. If you chose to compare and contrast homeschooling and public schooling, for example, you might interview someone who was homeschooled for 3 or 4 years and then attended public school. Even though that would be only one person's experience, that one experience could add support. Or survey various groups that would have some knowledge about your topic. That will add first-hand research to your paper. For example, you might send a survey to 50 students who were homeschooled and 50 who attended public school, and ask questions such as, how much time did you spend studying? And in what social activities did you participate? You would then be able to compare and contrast the results. As you locate and read valid and diverse sources, be certain to record the sources. Trying to relocate a source can be time-consuming and frustrating. Whether you're making paper copies of your sources or keeping an electronic file, highlight information that you think will help you make a point, or annotate recurring key points. Also annotate if you find contradictory information in different sources. Later you will need to analyze the contradiction. Maybe one of the authors is well known in the field and the other is not. Perhaps one of the articles is more current than the other one, so contains more up-to-date statistics. You might even use some type of color-coded system. Look at your thesis, the point's main idea. You might mark in red the research that applies to the first main support point, blue for the second and yellow for the third. Or maybe just label the sections A, B, and C, and use the corresponding letter by their related research. Anything you take the time to do while you're researching will make organizing your research easier later on in the writing process. Online or pouring through hardback books and slick magazines, primary or secondary, commercial or government sites, regardless of the research sources, you must research your topic. The first 3 steps of the research process are to know what you're researching, to find that research, and to review and select carefully what you will use as support for your key points. Now you're ready to organize the research into a clear arrangement that your reader will understand. During this step, you may realize that some of the research you collected is outside the scope of your research topic. Or you may realize that you need more research in some areas, or both. Discard some and add more. Being aware of these two concerns should be ongoing until the research paper is completed. The information has been gathered from a variety of sources, and you have been taking notes, highlighting key information, and noting themes or key ideas related to your topic. For example, do the majority of your sources refer to one key expert in this particular field? Do the various experts agree, and why or why not? How much new information have you added to your already existing knowledge about the idea? Do you have any unanswered questions? You think your research is mostly completed, and you are ready to start organizing that information. A variety of ways to accomplish this exist. Focused free writing. Just start writing whatever comes to your mind about your topic. Or brainstorming, a word or clause list of ideas as they form. Or clustering, drawing a bubble map to show the different directions your idea can develop. Whichever one of these you choose to use will eventually lead you to an organized outline. If you've never used any of these methods, you may want to experiment with all of them to help you determine which one works best for you and your learning style. There is no right or wrong, good or bad. Each has its own advantages and disadvantages. The important thing is not which method you use, but that you use one to help you plan and pre-write, so you will produce an organized research paper. You also need to determine the best organizational pattern once the research is grouped. Consider these three choices. Each can be used separately or combined with one or more of the others. First, chronological or time order. If your topic has a time sequence to it, then organizing based on that sequence helps the reader follow the timeline. Maybe you're describing the process of becoming an effective time manager. You might begin with what needs to be done first. Record how you currently use your time for 2 weeks. Then analyze that current use, which leads to the next step of preparing a to-do list, and then prioritizing the listed items. Even though no actual dates are given, each step needs to be done in a specific sequence or order. You could even include an actual projected timeline for achieving each of the steps. Of course, if you were writing your autobiography, you would begin with your birth date and continue giving dates until the present. Words such as first, next, finally, or last help the reader follow the time sequence. I attended my first school from kindergarten until 3rd. My next school lasted from 4th to 10th grade. Finally, my junior and senior years were completed in yet a 3rd school. Another possible organizational pattern is the spatial arrangement related to space. If you're writing a descriptive paper, for example, you will want to help your reader visualize the space you're describing. Words such as on the left, on the right, above, below, on the top, around, and over are words that help identify space. If you wanted to describe how you're going to reorganize your workspace to help you better manage your time, you might begin with the computer. Then to the right of the computer is your phone and printer. Next to the phone is a pad of paper and a pen so you can take quick notes. On the left of the computer are your reference books in alphabetical order. All your other supplies, such as paper clips and staples, are in the top drawer. The reader can imagine the physical layout of your work area. The third major organizational possibility to consider is the order of importance. Actually, this one can be divided either from most important to least or from least to most. If I want to convince my reader of the importance of effective time management, I could begin with the most impressive important reason, a greater chance for being promoted, for example. The second reason might be that all the work gets completed during the day, so no take-home work. And third, more time to socialize with coworkers during the scheduled lunch and break times. Or maybe your goal is to build suspense. If so, the above order would be reversed. Perhaps your reader will be more likely to read the entire paper as the drama builds. Transitional words for this would be first, next, most important, of lesser importance, and finally. So as you organize your research for the final paper, be sure to use a pre-writing technique that fits your learning style and to arrange the information in a logical pattern, one that's easy to follow, clear, and makes sense. Preparing a brainstorming list is one of the early attempts to determine what key points you want to consider including in your research paper. Start listing any and all of the ideas that you know or have read about in any order they come to mind. Main ideas will be mixed among examples and major and minor detail and even irrelevant information. Anything you put on your list is correct. It's your list, your ideas, and your research. If you are generally a list maker, this method may appeal to you. The disadvantage of this method is that the ideas are in random order, and each will have to be evaluated as you continue organizing your research paper. Let's continue with our homeschooling versus public schooling research paper idea. You've read 12 sources and talked with a couple families with homeschooled children. A portion of your brainstorming list might look like this. Flexibility. Don't worry about having to wear certain clothes. Disruptions. Flexible schedule. Children can progress at own rate. Segregated from other kids. This is only the start of brainstorming. But when you can't think of anything else to add to your list, then look at the items and see if any big ideas emerge. You will most likely be able to see some like ideas that you could begin to group under broader categories. In other words, you are identifying main ideas and choosing the subpoints for each main topic. For example, several of the items in the sample list seem to pertain to an increased opportunity for individuality. So let's arrange those subpoints into a modified outline format. Increased opportunity for flexibility. Now let's add 3 possible subpoints. More easily adapt to individual learning styles. Can spend more time on individual interest. And chance to progress at own rate. Each of those points from the brainstorming list would be marked off as it's used. Then another potential main category would be identified. Disadvantages, for example. These subpoints could include disruptions, segregated from other kids, must have a willing, focused parent, and must buy all materials. Some items on the list will be dropped. Maybe the cost of textbooks for all students is high. And your personal opinion about homeschooling. The ideas of more family time and the possibility of more varied experience might be combined. But more specific research will be needed to provide examples and specifics. And later you may decide to tweak your original groupings. But at least you have a starting point. This rough outline that emerges from the brainstorming list brings you another step closer to being ready to actually begin writing your research paper. The organizational pattern, areas that need more research, and ideas that need to be dropped are all beginning to emerge as you continue the process of writing that research paper. You have most of your general research completed and may have an idea of what key areas you want to include in your research paper. How do you convert these ideas in a logical plan? Brainstorming is certainly one way to achieve this, but not the only way. Another way is to cluster, spider web, or map the ideas, all different names for the same process. The advantage of this organizational method is that it allows you, the writer, to see how the ideas connect, and you can put the subpoints under main ideas as you progress. This method can be helpful for visual learners, those who like to see what's happening. Couple disadvantages are that sometimes for a long research paper, the bubbles get overwhelming, and you are forced to immediately decide where each bubble should be placed. Let's use the homeschooling versus public schooling example. The big bubble in the middle would be the main topic, home and public schooling. One offshoot would be flexibility. The 3 smaller bubbles, which are the support points, would be adapt to individual learning styles, spend more time on individual interest, and progress at own rate. On the other side is another line with disadvantages. Then the smaller support bubbles would be disruptions, no friends, available parent, and cost of school supplies. This is only a start. You might glance at your bubble to be sure that you haven't included anything irrelevant such as a personal unsupported opinion. Or if one branch has only 1 or 2 sub-bubbles, that might indicate that you need to do more research in that area or drop the idea completely. You may decide to add another branch or two, so use this map to guide your writing or to help you convert the information to an actual outline such as this one. Once the organizational map and outline are complete, you are ready to begin the next step, drafting the research paper. Brainstorming, clustering, and now a third choice, focused free writing. Another method for helping you start deciding what ideas are important, which ones seem to be key points in most of the research you located, where you need more research, and what needs to be deleted because it doesn't relate to the thesis. Focused free writing appeals to those who want ideas to flow quickly without the temptation to stop and analyze each point before including it. Set a timer, 15 minutes for example. During those 15 minutes, you force yourself to keep those words flowing. Never stop writing or typing, even if you have to repeat the same idea 2 or 3 times. And never worry about mechanics. Just write. This method helps you turn your research into your own words and eventually helps you see key ideas emerging. Look at this example. Never go backward with free writing. Even though spelling errors and run-on sentences are evident, don't correct them. Redundant wording such as "like my friends," you'll revise later. Just keep writing. After you free write, read what you've written and underline or highlight what seems like important or key ideas that your research has revealed. Maybe use 2 or 3 different highlighters or different color font to identify those key ideas, categories that will lead to the final outline. Also, mark out those ideas that are isolated or personal opinion. This example uses blue font for ideas related to flexibility and red for the projected disadvantages. The writer's opinion about being with friends and cost of textbooks are marked out. Now that key ideas are identified and irrelevant ideas are dropped, let's group those ideas and look at the emerging outline. Under flexibility, individual learning styles, interest, and progression rate could be included. The disadvantages that emerge from the free writing could be disruptions, no social contacts, available parent, and need to buy supplies. Re-examine your research. Some areas may need more support, examples and statistics. Some ideas may need to be combined. But this beginning outline will help guide you as you take the next step in writing your research paper. You have decided that your research paper will be about the importance of sleep, exercise, and nutrition for good health. And you've collected secondary research from books and magazines, newspapers, maybe a recent television newscast, from a variety of websites, and primary research from a local doctor and a couple friends, one who has a sleep disorder and one who has recently lost 20 pounds. As you analyze your research, you begin to make notes, either as a brainstorming list or a mapping diagram. This example is a brainstorming list. What are some of the key ideas? Let's look at this list. 70 million people have sleep problems. Early weight loss pills included arsenic. Fast food chains are making changes. Working the night shift impacts the natural circadian rhythm. Food pyramid, diet ads, gym membership, and hidden calories. Even though the articles, books, and interviews contain more information than the points listed, let's analyze what is going on in our starting list. Sleep, exercise, and nutrition are the 3 main categories we researched. So let's start there, and then start grouping under each of those main topics. Also, as we progress, we can decide which items on our brainstorming list should be dropped. Those items that are unrelated or personal unsupported opinions, for example. The outline could start taking form as in this example. Under sleep, we could list types of sleep problems and the results of not sleeping. Our exercise section could be organized by types of exercise and exercise choices. Our nutrition segment might contain information about what causes poor nutritional habits. Once we group those items, we will probably drop "would love to live in Hawaii," "tried honey, lemon, and hot water," and "friend swims and bicycles." And even though we're working on the body of the research essay, a couple of the more general listed items could be grouped as possibilities to later include in the introduction, such as the increased number of people with sleep and health problems and the states with the highest levels of obesity and smoking rates, and even the startling statement that early weight loss pills included arsenic. After we organize these ideas into meaningful categories, we can then go through the research again and flesh out the ideas with specific facts and data. Research, list items in random order or group them in categories, then continue grouping them as major support or minor support ideas. Next, examine that emerging outline. Look for areas that need more support and areas that don't seem to be connected to the paper's theses. Group, add, and drop until that final outline is ready. That all-important thesis statement. Think of it as the umbrella for everything that will be in your paper. It's the big idea, the main idea, the most important idea, the controlling idea, whatever you want to call it. It's your starting point. It should be as specific as possible. You give yourself a clear idea of what to include in the paper, and eventually you give your reader a clear idea of what to expect in the paper. Sometimes you may compose the thesis statement before beginning the research. Other times you may be uncertain exactly what your main idea will be. So you research the general ideas and then write the theses. Let's look at both situations. You know that you want to research homeschooling and how it compares and contrasts to public schooling. You really aren't familiar with how homeschooling works, but you met someone who was homeschooled and had an interesting conversation with him. You've decided that you're interested in the topic and it has enough depth for a research idea. So you began to research homeschooling. As you collect information, you began to better understand the pros and cons of homeschooling and decide that you want your final research paper to focus on 3 aspects of homeschooling, 2 advantages and 1 challenge. You decide on this thesis. Homeschooling offers flexibility and encourages individuality, even though it requires parental obligations. Once the thesis is decided, you are ready to group the research you've collected into these 3 areas. You know that 1 major body section of your paper will be about flexibility, 1 about students' individuality needs, and 1 about the necessity of parental involvement. In other words, the thesis, that umbrella, includes all the major ideas that will be in the final research paper. So the thesis may be written after the bulk of the research is completed. On the other hand, you may choose a topic that you're interested in and already know a lot about. In that case, you may want to compose the thesis before beginning the research. Having the thesis determined before beginning the research will help you research specific areas. You're interested in the body, mind, and health connection. You're an avid exerciser, study all nutritional labels, and frequently read articles in health magazines to which you subscribe about the dangers of sleep deprivation. You decide to continue to research your area of interest for your research paper. You compose your thesis as your starting point. Diet, exercise, and sleep have a major impact on physical health and mental health. That's the umbrella. So as you begin your research on a topic about which you are already familiar, you will be looking for specific information on food and nutrition, aerobic and anaerobic exercise, and sleep patterns. So regardless, if you prepare that thesis statement before or after you research, it must be prepared before the actual writing is started. It clearly identifies the key ideas for your paper. The thesis is prepared. It is the controlling idea. The outline is ready. It shows the order of the paragraphs that will support that controlling idea. So the next step is to compose a topic sentence for each of the supporting paragraphs. The thesis statement gives the main idea of the entire paper. The topic sentence gives the main idea for each of the supporting paragraphs. So an analogy would be that the thesis is to the essay as the topic sentence is to the paragraph. Each tells what follows. The thesis tells what follows in the essay. The topic sentence tells what follows in the paragraph. The topic sentence should not be too broad nor too narrow, and it must be a complete sentence. The topic sentence is usually, but not always, the first sentence of the paragraph. Our homeschooling thesis and outline show that we will have a major section on flexibility. The thesis statement is homeschooling offers flexibility and encourages individuality even though it requires parental obligation. Based on the outline, that first key point will have 3 or possibly more support paragraphs. Each of those paragraphs will need a clear topic sentence. Look at these 3 possible choices for the first topic sentence. Flexibility in lots of areas. Kids who are homeschooled can learn the way they learn best at their own pace and learn more about what really interests them. And homeschooling's flexibility allows for emphasis on individual learning styles. The first example is too broad, and it isn't a complete sentence. The second example is too specific and tries to incorporate all 3 of the major support points. The third example is specific and focuses on only the first support point, so it would be the correct choice for a topic sentence. The topic sentence for the second support paragraph under flexibility could be, being able to spend more time on individual interest is another flexible aspect of homeschooling. The third topic sentence for this section might be, homeschooled students can also progress at their own rates. Now let's look at the diet, exercise, and sleep example. Diet, exercise, and sleep have a major impact on physical health and mental health. Which of these would be the best topic sentence for the sleep portion of the paper? Importance of sleep? Not sleeping because of apnea or insomnia can cause major problems, especially when the circadian rhythm is interrupted. Or sleep is necessary to keep the brain alert. Again, the first example is too broad, and it's not a complete sentence. The second is too specific, and the third is an example of a clear topic sentence. It identifies for the writer what to include in that paragraph and tells the reader what to expect. Based on the outline, this example might also have minor support paragraphs with examples about night workers having their circadian sleep rhythm interrupted, which results in the brain not staying alert. The topic sentence would be, circadian rhythm disorders can be caused by working night shifts. The next major section topic would be, sleep orders in general are increasing. Each key paragraph has one main idea, and that main idea needs to be expressed in a topic sentence. That all-important topic sentence, although usually the first sentence is shown in the examples we looked at, is sometimes the last sentence. Occasionally, it may even be in the middle of the paragraph. Placing it first is usually the safest method, but ultimately, be sure each paragraph has a clear topic sentence that is a complete sentence that is neither too broad nor too narrow. How is a paragraph defined? One idea, developed to support that one idea, and that one idea is stated in the paragraph's topic sentence. Each paragraph typically has 6 to 7 20-word sentences, or about 120 to 150 words. If the paragraph exceeds that, then examine the paragraph's content to determine if all the sentences relate directly to the topic sentence. Let's look at a couple rough draft paragraphs for the topic sentence. Homeschooling's flexibility allows for emphasis on individual learning styles. Different people have different learning styles. When students are in public schools, the teacher can adapt to only 1 or 2 of those styles. Some schools show a lot of movies. Some students learn better by seeing, some by doing, and some by hearing. We all learn better when we're taught based on the learning styles that work best for us. Is that a good paragraph? Look at the key words in the topic sentence: homeschooling, flexibility, and individual learning styles. What in the paragraph supports that? Actually, nothing. The words learning and styles are used 4 times, but the information is general and not applied specifically to why homeschooling provides that flexibility. Do the ideas that are included all relate to the learning styles in general? The fact that some schools show a lot of movies does not relate to the topic sentence at all. Let's rewrite that paragraph using the same topic sentence. In public schools, one teacher may try to adapt to visual learners, auditory learners, and verbal learners. That challenge is difficult with perhaps 20 or 30 students in one classroom all at the same time. On the other hand, having 1 to 4 children in the same family in a homeschooling environment enables the parent, who is the teacher, the opportunity to engage with each child in a way that he or she learns best. For example, one child may want to read aloud, while another wants to see a video or movie related to the history lesson. Knowing each child's needs and having the flexibility to change or adapt how the lesson is presented will help that child learn the material more easily. 6 sentences, 132 words. Specific information such as visual and auditory learners, a concrete example of reading versus seeing, and the impact of that flexibility. That example meets all the requirements of a clear, developed paragraph. Let's examine a couple sample paragraphs for a portion of the sleep diet exercise topic. Here's the topic sentence. Let's look at this paragraph with that topic sentence. When people don't get enough sleep, they can't concentrate. I know that from when I try to cram for an exam. All my friends cram for exams. Sometimes our internal clocks get messed up when we travel or when we work nights. One of my friends says he never feels totally rested when he works the night shift. So lack of concentration, the inability to remember, and some people are lots more irritable when they don't get sleep, are all important reasons for getting enough sleep to keep the brain alert. What are the problems with that paragraph? Could you identify if the ideas are not developed? That friends cram for exams is unrelated to the topic sentence? And the internal clock information, even though it is related to the overall topic, doesn't fit with this topic sentence. Now let's examine this paragraph. According to the National Sleep Foundation, sleep is essential for a person to stay focused. Without enough sleep, a person may become irritable, have impaired memory, and prolonged lapses of attention. For example, some students may try to pull an all-nighter cramming for a test, only to realize during the test that the facts and figures they knew at 3 a.m. could not be recalled during the 10 a.m. test. In addition, people who work night shifts frequently report that they have trouble focusing, even after having slept 5 or 7 hours during the day. Researchers believe that lack of sleep seriously impairs a person's ability to focus, to learn efficiently, and to retain information long term. Getting enough sleep is crucial to keep the brain alert. 7 sentences, 141 words. The revision includes specifics of what lack of sleep can do and the value of getting sleep, and all the ideas are connected. In other words, one developed idea stated in the topic sentence with specific support for that topic sentence. Check each of your paragraphs. One idea based on the topic sentence? Between 120 and 150 words? All the statements support the main idea? If so, you have a well-written paragraph that will be part of your final research paper. As you organize your research into categories and compose topic sentences for each main idea, think about the support to include to fully explain each topic sentence and ultimately the thesis. Let's examine 5 different types of support you can use to give depth to your main ideas. First, support may be specific examples. Examples give tangible information that readers can imagine. For example, if you're showing the advantages of homeschooling, giving an example of a successful business person who is homeschooled would help emphasize your point. If you're showing that a balanced diet and exercise can result in a healthier body and mind, you could provide an example of someone who lost 50 pounds and was able to stop taking blood pressure medications after changing his eating pattern and starting an exercise routine. Additionally, facts provide concrete supporting evidence. Facts are objective, proven. Facts, for example, include statistics, results of experiments, and the result of an unbiased observation, maybe based on surveys or government data. Look at these examples of facts from a homeschool fact sheet. Currently, 1.5 to 1.7 million students are homeschooled in the U.S. 95% of homeschoolers had an adequate comprehension of politics and government, compared to 65% of U.S. adults in general. Significantly, 76% of homeschooled graduates voted in a national or state election within the past 5 years, compared to 29% of similar U.S. adults. Those facts about homeschooled students add specific support or depth. Sometimes you may find supporting statements that aren't proven facts. These reasons can still be used to add depth to the information. So reasons is a third category of support. These reasons may even be a combination of facts and educated opinions. An example of using a reason to support the advantage of homeschooling would be, homeschooled students are not subjected to bullying as often as students in public school. One of the most frequent reasons given for removing students from the public school system to a homeschool environment is to avoid bullying. Logic, or an educated conclusion, would lead to that reason since the homeschooled students are not with other students. A personal experience or description, although subjective, could also add specific support. So that personal, relevant experience is a fourth way that might help illustrate a point. When interviewed about their homeschooling experience, the Kleiners said their kids are very involved in Boy and Girl Scout programs and that their family hosts monthly social events with other homeschooled families. Of course, that's only one family's experience, but it does add a human interest element, and it correlates with the research. Finally, opinions of experts is another way to add credibility and support. These authorities' quotes can be powerful. Consider this statement from someone who is considered a leading expert in the homeschooling field. According to Tamara Orr, a home educator and the author of several books on homeschooling, such as A Parent's Guide to Homeschooling, quote, since both my husband and I had been students who had had bad experiences in public school, I was immediately intrigued by the homeschooling concept, end of quote. Or this expert, Dr. Raymond Moore, in his book Better Late Than Early, writes that, quote, the idea that children need to be around many other youngsters in order to be socialized is perhaps the most dangerous and extravagant myth in education and child-rearing today, end of quote. The credentials of those whom you are quoting add credible support. Merely making a statement is not enough. Your reader expects you to show how your research supports that statement. Can you provide specific examples? Facts based on valid investigations? Logical reasons that have general facts to support them. Maybe you can describe your or someone else's personal experience. Or what do the experts have to say? Regardless of the topic for your research paper, each idea must be supported with valid, reliable, credible research. Transition is the glue that holds the parts together. Even though you may have sufficient research to support your key points and your research paper is organized by those key points, it may still be hard for the reader to understand. Trying to read something that jumps from point to point is difficult. Readers need connectors, that glue, to show how the various topics, support, and ideas are tied together in a logical pattern. 4 transitional methods are possible. The first is to repeat the key word or words. When the reader repeatedly sees a word or idea, he is guided smoothly from point to point. Look at this example in this paragraph. Using the words circadian rhythm 3 times helps the reader connect the ideas. Another transitional method is to use a synonym for the key words. This method could be considered if repeating the same word starts sounding too redundant. However, be certain the reader realizes that the words or terms are being used synonymously. In this example, internal body clock, 24-hour natural brain wave activity, and normal sleep pattern are used as synonyms for circadian rhythm. A third transitional technique is to use pronoun references. This technique can be effective if the pronoun has a clear reference. Let's look at the example again. The pronoun this refers to the circadian rhythm, and both he and who clearly refer to Andrews. Transitional words are yet another way to tie together ideas for the reader. This example uses 5 transitional words or phrases, or even though, in addition, and rather than, are used to show the reader how the ideas connect. Transitional words must be chosen carefully because different transitional words show different relationships. Do you want to add additional examples? Furthermore, in addition, are examples that would show that relationship. Comparing or contrasting? Likewise, and similarly show comparison. However, and on the other hand, show contrast. All are transitional words showing connections. Are you including an illustration or an example? Preface it with for example or for instance. Is your purpose to show a cause and effect relationship? As a result, therefore, or consequently would be used to show that relationship. Summarizing your key points, maybe lead the summary with to conclude or to summarize. All four techniques can, at the appropriate places while showing the correct relationships, help the reader stay connected to what you've written. The ideas flow smoothly, and the reader understands how the words and ideas connect. Transition is the glue that holds the parts together. Even though you may have sufficient research to support your key points and your research paper is organized by those key points, it may still be hard for the reader to understand. Trying to read something that jumps from point to point is difficult. Readers need connectors, that glue, to show how the various topics, support, and ideas are tied together in a logical pattern. 4 transitional methods are possible. The first is to repeat the key word or words. When the reader repeatedly sees a word or idea, he is guided smoothly from point to point. Look at this example in this paragraph. Using the words circadian rhythm 3 times helps the reader connect the ideas. Another transitional method is to use a synonym for the key words. This method could be considered if repeating the same word starts sounding too redundant. However, be certain the reader realizes that the words or terms are being used synonymously. In this example, internal body clock, 24-hour natural brain wave activity, and normal sleep pattern are used as synonyms for circadian rhythm. A third transitional technique is to use pronoun references. This technique can be effective if the pronoun has a clear reference. Let's look at the example again. The pronoun this refers to the circadian rhythm, and both he and who clearly refer to Andrews. Transitional words are yet another way to tie together ideas for the reader. This example uses 5 transitional words or phrases, or even though, in addition, and rather than, are used to show the reader how the ideas connect. Transitional words must be chosen carefully because different transitional words show different relationships. Do you want to add additional examples? Furthermore, in addition, are examples that would show that relationship. Comparing or contrasting? Likewise, and similarly, show comparison. However, and on the other hand, show contrast. All are transitional words showing connections. Are you including an illustration or an example? Preface it with for example or for instance. Is your purpose to show a cause and effect relationship? As a result, therefore, or consequently would be used to show that relationship. Summarizing your key points, maybe lead the summary with to conclude or to summarize. All 4 techniques can, at the appropriate places while showing the correct relationships, help the reader stay connected to what you've written. The ideas flow smoothly, and the reader understands how the words and ideas connect. Even though the introduction is the first thing the reader sees, it is not necessarily, and probably shouldn't be, the first thing the writer writes. Sometimes writing the body first will help you compose the introduction. Whether it's written first or last, the introduction has specific requirements. Let's look at those. First, it will contain the thesis statement, that umbrella sentence that tells the reader the purpose of the research paper. The reader knows immediately that flexibility, individuality, and parental obligations will be the discussion's focus in the essay. Because it is important that the reader know what the central idea is, the thesis is usually the first or the last sentence in the introductory paragraph. Those 2 locations are the primary emphasis points. Even though the thesis is certainly an important part of the introduction, it isn't enough. That first paragraph also needs to get the reader's attention and get her interested in your topic and your research. Certainly there is no one exact way to write the introductory paragraph, but always avoid opening with, "This research paper will discuss," or "I'm going to show you that." The focus should be on the topic and the research rather than on the writer. Let's look at some possible ideas in addition to always including the thesis statement for ways to introduce your research essay. Maybe give an illustration. Illustrations can help make the topic more concrete or vivid. Maybe you know a homeschool student and begin by illustrating the diverse opportunities that students had that you, as a traditionally schooled student, did not. Or an illustration that shows the variety of people who have been homeschooled. For example, celebrities from artists, entertainers, inventors, athletes to presidents have been homeschooled. U.S. Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, inventor Thomas Edison, Franklin Roosevelt, the 32nd president, and Olympic figure skater Michelle Kwan are all famous and were all homeschooled. Or a direct quote, some attention-getting statement. Maybe that homeschooled student you know said, "Being homeschooled's the best thing that ever happened to me." Or a quote from someone famous, "There is no school equal to a decent home and no teacher equal to a virtuous parent," by Gandhi. Another choice for that opening paragraph is to give a surprising or startling fact. 89% reading, 84% language arts and math, 86% science. What do those percentages in three areas represent? The percent of homeschooled students who outperformed public school students. Another introductory choice is to open with a general statement and then narrow it to the specific thesis. A general to narrow example could be this. Much attention is being given today to high school graduation rates, how stringent the graduation requirements are in various countries, and if too much attention is focused on teaching to test rather than helping students learn. All of these educational concerns are valid. One specific educational area that's receiving attention is the number of students who are being homeschooled and how the homeschooled students compare and contrast with public school educated students. Or you might consider beginning with a contradiction, such as, when the words homeschooling are used, many people immediately think no social life, lots of playtime, doing whatever the student wants, being with family 24/7, not having to worry about taking tests, and not being a viable candidate for college admission. However, none of these views is correct. A thought-provoking question is yet another choice. The U.S. Department of Education's National Center for Education Statistics shows that the percent of children who are homeschooled increased 36% over a recent 4-year span. That percent equates to over 2.5 million school-aged children being educated at home. So why is homeschooling becoming increasingly unpopular? Whichever introductory method you use, and whether you write it first or last, it should make clear to the reader what key points will be discussed in your research paper, and get the reader interested in your topic and motivated to continue reading. All the pre-writing steps are complete. From merely having an idea, to researching to learn more about your idea and brainstorming, dropping and grouping and maybe adding as you continue to research, to that final outline and the thesis for the entire paper, and topic sentences for each paragraph idea. Now and only now are you ready to begin drafting. The difficult pre-writing steps are complete, so you're ready to write the first draft, ready to present that research you've collected in that logically organized pattern you've developed. Here's our thesis and the outline. Let's write a portion of the body of the research paper. The ending and the introduction are each discussed in their own lessons. As we look at these sections, note the topic sentences, the transition, the types of support, and the difference between major and minor support. Notice the transition, on the other hand, that alerts your reader that you're going to contrast. And for example, minor support for the previous statement. Most of the support in this paragraph is common knowledge that you know, having read numerous articles about homeschooling. The Allender Online article did include this example you paraphrased, so it needs to be cited. Here's the next paragraph. The transition additionally added to the topic sentence leads into the idea in this paragraph. The paragraph contains specific examples, but ones you came up with on your own, common knowledge, so no citations. Notice the transition, first, second for the two reasons identified, thus showing a cause-effect connection, and contrasting words on the other hand. Another example clearly identifies additional support for the flexibility idea. A source by Reeves gave the hands-on experience of talking to a local rep, attending a government meeting, or becoming a state house page. So that paraphrase will be credited to him. Perhaps and but are also important connectors of ideas. This topic sentence ties together the last section, individual interest encourages, and identifies that another benefit will now be discussed. Learning disabled students can progress at their own rate. Not only is the connector. An example is given, identified by, for example. A change of direction is provided with but, and if so, also helps the paragraph's flow. As you examine the next 5 examples of body paragraphs, continue to notice the topic sentence, the support, major and minor ideas, the documentation, and the transition. Now a change into the last major section, third point in the thesis, even though, is the transition into parental commitment. The next paragraph is a continuation of the previous idea. It's still discussing the importance of the homeschooling, parent understanding learning styles. The next paragraph is a counterpoint, countering the opposition. Those opposed will say, homeschoolers get no socialization. So support needs to be offered that criticism is not valid. Also notice that this is an example of a topic sentence at the end of the paragraph rather than at the beginning. Transition here is the repeat of the keyword social. This last example paragraph adds more specifics about how to offer social opportunities for homeschooled children. For example, additionally, and such as connect the ideas in the paragraph and tie it back to the previous paragraph. As you can see from these portions of the research paper, the thesis and the topic sentences are essential to the paper's organization. All the time spent on those pre-writing steps has now resulted in a well-organized, completely supported first draft of your research paper. Of course, adding the introduction and the ending, and revising and possibly rewriting will still be necessary, but you are a big step closer to completing the final paper. As its name indicates, this ending, this summary, this conclusion, is one of the last parts of the research paper to be written, and of course appears at the end. This ending should be a logical completion of the main points in the paper and leave the reader with a final thought. The ending, just like the introduction, can take different forms, depending on the topic and the purpose. Even though you do have choices for the ending, as I told you in the beginning, or I'm now going to end my paper, are not among those choices. And although not necessarily incorrect, try to avoid the much overused in summary and in conclusion. Also, some instructors may assign a certain type of ending, so be certain to follow those requirements. If no specific requirements are given, then here are some choices to consider. Your goal, of course, should be to end with a final point that flows from or recaps the essay's main ideas or points. Don't just summarize. You do want your reader to understand how your entire research paper supports the thesis, but you also want to leave your reader with something memorable. You should neither introduce any totally new ideas in the conclusion, nor merely repeat your thesis. You want your paper's topic to be one the reader will continue thinking about. For example, if you use the question approach in your introduction, you could end with a thought-provoking question, and perhaps include the original thesis in a fresh way. This leaves the reader thinking about an answer. Here's an example. With all the benefits that homeschooling offers, flexibility, individuality, and parental involvement, would you consider it for your family? Or leave the reader with a memorable quote such as, Albert Einstein said, It is the supreme art of the teacher to awaken joy in creative expression and knowledge. Awakening this joy, encouraging creativity, and teaching solid knowledge. That's what every teacher strives for. But what type of learning environment is more conducive for teachers to achieve this supreme art? Public schooling or homeschooling? Making that decision is every parent's right and responsibility. Or if the purpose of your essay was to motivate action, then end with a call to action. Do something. The next time you hear someone mention homeschooling, defend the right to homeschool and share the numerous advantages that homeschoolers have. Maybe you want to end with why the topic is important. Being certain that children are getting the best education possible is a concern of all parents. Public schools cannot provide the individual flexible instruction that homeschooling does. Each family needs to decide if homeschooling is the correct decision. That decision will impact your children's lives forever. Another strong ending could be a powerful image or picture. So once again, second grader Max complains about an upset stomach and doesn't want to go to school. His teachers say he isn't keeping up with the other students, and he says other students make fun of him sometimes. Any parent would be concerned. You have him tested and he is diagnosed as having dyslexia and will probably always struggle with math and spelling. You can hire a private tutor. That's costly. You can ask the teacher to slow down the class just for Max. That's impossible with another 24 students in the classroom. Or maybe you can homeschool him to allow flexibility for his individual needs. Or maybe end with another of the introductory choices, general to narrow. All parents want their children to succeed, and different children need different pathways and options to find success. Some students thrive in the public school system and others do not. For those who need another option, homeschooling, even though it has its own set of challenges, may be the best option. As you can see, a variety of possibilities exist, but always remember that the ending deserves the same attention as all the other parts of the research paper. Because it is the last thing the reader reads, make it clear and memorable. The title is usually one of, if not the last thing you compose. However, it is the first thing your reader sees and is a major part of forming the reader's first impression. You want that first impression to be a positive one, so take time to think about that title. You want to avoid a title that's too broad or just lists the topic. Homeschooling, for example, would not be an acceptable title. To help you compose the title, go back and look at your thesis statement, your introduction, and your conclusion. Even think about your audience. A good title has two purposes. First, it either directly gives or indirectly suggests the subject of your research paper. The title's second purpose is to make the reader interested in your paper. And whatever title you choose, be certain that the information included in the final research paper is reflected in the title. It can be a straightforward descriptive title, the advantages and disadvantages of homeschooling. Or a two-part title can be used. The first part of a two-part title states the general subject, and the second part narrows that subject. A colon is usually used between the two parts. For example, homeschooling, pros and cons. Even though those two examples are acceptable titles, unless someone had a pre-existing interest in homeschooling, the titles probably don't generate a lot of interest or excitement. For more interest building, you might use a thought-provoking question, one that might make your reader want to read your paper to learn the answer you are presenting. Is homeschooling the solution to public school bullying? Is an example. Or you might want to create a title that shows the reader what types of research paper you prepared. Here are example titles for 4 organizational patterns. For descriptive, the homeschooling environment. Argumentative or persuasive, the need for increased homeschooling. Compare and contrast, value and restrictions of homeschooling. Cause and effect, the effects of public and homeschooling on children. Or maybe you want to be more creative. Schoolhouse or house school. Homeschool secrets, happy, smart, and engaged. Is homeschooling a successful fad? In each of those 3 examples, the reader may be curious about your paper's content. So you've created interest and given a good first impression. Be sure to take the time to create that perfect title. APA, American Psychological Association. MLA, Modern Language Association. CMS, Chicago Manual of Style. Turabian. Just hearing those abbreviations and words sends some people into a panic attack. Are you one of those folks? I certainly am, and I have to confess that I still double-check when I'm citing sources. Am I positive that the Chicago Manual of Style, which is almost identical to the Turabian style, uses the month, day, and year in that order as a citation format for dates? And that American Psychological Association uses year, month, day in that order? And that the Modern Language Association uses day, month abbreviated, year in that order? I'm usually 90% certain I'm correct, but also tell myself I'd better check, and I do. Are you also one of those people who wonder why 3 or 4 similar yet different enough to be confusing styles exist? I'm on your side on that also. So we agree that memorizing the exact format for all styles for dozens of research items is impossible, and that trying to differentiate among all those formats gets extremely confusing. However, they do need to be used correctly. Using them correctly adds to your credibility as a writer. You may not even be sure which one to use. Most professors in universities and businesses have guidelines regarding their preferred style. If you do use the same style over and over, it becomes more familiar to you and you begin to feel more confident that you are using it correctly. Here are some reference websites to help you with whichever style you're assigned or choose to use. This OWL resource is an 11-page comparison of the 3 styles for citing a variety of sources. The ISU site also gives examples and additionally includes a simple comparison table for the 3 styles with yes or no answers for questions such as, is the access date required for online sources? The answer is yes for MLA and CMS, no for APA. Are periods required in state abbreviations? The answer is no for all 3 styles. Although numerous websites are available to show each style, here are some that provide easy-to-read details. For the Chicago Manual of Style, the Turabian, American Psychological Association, and the Modern Language Association. One commonality for all styles is that they use a complete list of all sources at the end of the research paper, works cited, or bibliography. The format for each of the 3 styles will be shown in the individual discussions. However, regardless of what it's called, the sources are listed in alphabetical order. One specific note about this alphabetizing that applies to all 3 styles is to ignore a, and the when alphabetizing by title. For example, if the titles of a couple sources you used were a parent's inside view of homeschooling and the importance of socialization for homeschoolers, those sources would be alphabetized by P for parent and I for importance. The words A and the would appear in the listed title, but would not be used for alphabetizing. Finally, keep in mind the overall purpose of the citation information: to protect the writer from plagiarism charges. Stealing someone else's words is a serious offense, and to get the reader to the original source. Occasionally, writers may use a hybrid style of the citing methods discussed. Just be certain that the citation in the paper can easily be referenced in the complete reference page at the end, and that the format used is consistent. The Modern Language Association referencing style, the MLA, is used mainly in the humanities. Each referencing style has its own specifics along with some general requirements that all the styles share. MLA has the author and page of each source, if given, identified in parentheses after every reference. This is called in-text citations. The short description then points the reader to the end of the research paper for the detailed information for each source. That complete list of sources is labeled Works Cited. The same format is used regardless if the material is directly quoted or paraphrased. You want to include this quote from a book in your paper. The in-text citation gives the author and the book page. Notice the order: ending quote marks, parentheses, author's last name, page number, no comma between those items, in parentheses, and then the period to end the sentence. Only the author's last name and page number are necessary unless you're using sources from authors with the same last name, James Walters and Samuel Walters. In that situation, the author's complete name would be included. The other exception is if you are using more than one source by Jim Walters. If that's the situation, then you need to add an abbreviated form of the title, in addition to the author's name. Separate the author's name and the title with a comma. The complete information on the work cited for a one-author hardback source would be listed as in this example. Notice that the entry has the author's last name first, that the book title is italicized, and print distinguishes it from an online source. Or you could use the format shown here. Since the author is already given, only the page number will be included in the end. If the above source was found in a newspaper, the in-text would be the same, except the book page number would be replaced with the newspaper section and page, as in this example. And the works cited entry would look like this. Again, author's name in reverse order, and then notice that the title of the article is in quote marks. The name of the newspaper is italicized, as was the book title in the first example. The date format, day before the month with the month abbreviated. The A9 refers to the newspaper section and page number, and again, the print differentiates it from an online source. Maybe Walters worked with Jan Anderson, a co-author on the book or article. The only difference would be listing both authors in the in-text citation, and including both on the works cited. Only the first author's name is in reverse order. All the other information would be the same. What if the source was an online periodical by Jim Walters? Just the author's last name would be in the in-text parentheses, but the works cited entry would be arranged like this. The main difference for this online source is that web is used rather than print, and two dates are necessary. The first is the publication date of the source, and the second is the date you access the information. A relatively recent change is that MLA no longer requires URLs in the works cited. The word web before the date you access the article replaces that often lengthy web address. Maybe you had the opportunity to personally interview Mr. Walters. Walters would be in the in-text information, and this would be your works cited entry. His name, how you got the information, and the date of the interview would be included. All of the examples so far show sources with an author's name included. However, you may find sources for which no author is given. If no author is given, then the in-text cite would be the complete title of the work or a shortened title version, as long as no other source begins with those same words. For example, only legal implications would be necessary in the in-text cite, rather than the entire legal implications of homeschooling. Then the source would be alphabetized by the title of the complete article. All other information would then be given in the same order as shown in the previous examples. The complete sources listed on the works cited use the hanging indentation format. The first line is flush with the left margin, and the additional lines for that entry are indented, and the lines of each entry are generally double-spaced. Encyclopedias, films, television, newscasts, surveys, a plethora of additional types of sources can be used, each with its specific format requirements. Very few can or would want to memorize the format of each of these. That's why a good reference book and online sources are necessary references. And a final reminder, instructors may have additional citation requirements that supplement or depart from these examples. Always ask if you have questions. The APA, short for American Psychological Association, is a documentation style used mainly in the science area. The APA format typically uses in-text citations with the author's last name and the date of the publication combined with the works cited at the end. The same format is used regardless if the material is directly quoted or paraphrased. In this example, notice that a comma is used between the last name and the date, and a comma between the date and the page number for the in-text citation. Notice also that P period is used to identify the page. PP period would be used if multiple pages were listed. If you include the author's name in your actual sentence, then the date and page are given after the name, which this example shows. The works cited page containing the full source information at the end of the research paper will use the same author and date style. However, a specific page number is not included. Here's how that entry would be listed. If the source has two authors, both, along with the date, would be given in the in-text information. Notice that the names are connected with the ampersand instead of the word and the works cited would use this format. Those examples were for print sources. Much of your research may be from the web. The in-text information will be the same, but the works cited entry will look like this. Notice that the months are spelled in full, and also one recent change in the APA guidelines is that the retrieval date need not be included unless the source material may change over time, such as citing something from Wikipedia. Most instructors warn against or even forbid using Wikipedia as a source, since anyone can change the information at any time. Exceptions always exist to the examples we've looked at. For example, what if you're using sources from authors with the same last name, Jim Walters and Samuel Walters? In that situation, the author's complete name would need to be included. Another exception is if you're using more than one source by Jim Walters. If that's the situation, then you need to add an abbreviated form of the title of the work in addition to the author's name. Separate the author's name and the title with commas as illustrated. Additionally, some sources you want to use may not have an author's name given. If that's the case, then the title or an abbreviated version of it is used in the in-text citation, and the article title is in the first position in the works cited entry. For example, only Legal Implications 2011 would be given in the in-text cite rather than the entire Legal Implications of Homeschooling. Then the source would be alphabetized by the title of the complete article. All other information would then be given in the same order as shown in the previous example. The complete sources listed on the works cited use the hanging indentation format. The first line is flush with the left margin, and the additional lines for that entry are indented. The lines of each entry are generally double-spaced. And a final reminder. Instructors may have additional citation requirements that supplement or depart from these examples. Always ask if you have questions. The Chicago-style documentation is a more traditional style used in business. Actually, two basic documentation formats are possible within this style. Footnotes or the author date in-text citation format can be used. A bibliography is used with both formats. Additionally, even within the footnote format, three variations are possible. One is to give the complete footnote information each time. The second is to give the complete information the first time, and then when the same source is used later, only an abbreviated version is necessary. That abbreviated format would be the same as the in-text examples given below. A third variation is to use IBID, OPCIT, and LOCCIT. These abbreviations are Latin derivatives. IBID means in the same place, OPCIT means in the work cited, and LOCCIT means in the place cited. If you want to know more about the Latin abbreviations, visit the websites given in the general overview. Those are not discussed in this lesson. Most word processing programs have a footnote feature to make using footnotes easy and to ensure that they are consistent. The program inserts the superscript, that little number raised slightly above the typewritten line, inserts the dividing line between the text and the first footnote on the page, indents the first line of the footnote, and uses the correct size and style of font for the actual footnote information you typed. Let's look at a couple of specific examples for Chicago style. You want to include this quote in your paper from a book. It was a 2011 book by Jim Walters, Legal Implications of Homeschooling, on page 52. If you're using footnotes, your footnote would look like this. If you were using in-text citation format, it would appear like this. And the complete entry in the bibliography, regardless of which variation you used, would be this. You probably noticed that the format and content for the bibliography are very close to the footnote, except that in the bibliography entry, the author's name is given in reverse order. Last name first, the exact page number is not included, and no parentheses are used. Now let's look at a two-author book. Jim Walters and Jan Anderson co-authored the book. The only difference in the footnote would be giving both authors' names and spelling in full the word "and." The only difference in the in-text citation would be giving both authors' last names. And the bibliographical entry would include both names, the first in reverse order, the second in normal order. If you found the book online, then the footnote would look like this. The access date may not be required. Do check with your instructor or your business for what is preferred. If the online source does not include page numbers, then a section title or chapter number can be used. Remember, the purpose of any citation is to direct your reader to the exact location of the source. The in-text format for the online book source would be the same as the hardback version. The access date, the web address if included, are given only in the bibliographical entry. An online journal article format follows the same format as any other online source. One additional point is to include the DOI if the journal lists one. That digital object identifier is a permanent ID added to the web address in your browser that will take the reader to the exact source. If the DOI isn't available, then use only the URL. Information about the DOI is available at this website. The footnote would look like this. The in-text site would not include the DOI, but the bibliographical entry would. In some situations, a website can be mentioned in the text. For example, Homeschooling Legal News noted on its website that a homeschooling conference will be held in 2016. If a more formal citation is required, this would be used. And the in-text would be this. If no authors given, then each of the examples we've looked at would begin with the title of the article. The rest of the entry would be identical. Another type of bibliography you might be asked to prepare is the annotated bibliography. An annotated bibliography includes not only the source information, but also includes a brief summary of the source and may add the writer's evaluation of that source, including the source's usefulness. A variety of other types of sources are available, such as email, a television program, articles and books with no author but with an editor. The list of possibilities goes on and on. Add to the endless list of types of research sources the fact that even within one citation method, in this case the Chicago-style manual, variations exist. That's why you should always clarify the specific requirements and expectations for your required documentation. As with all aspects of research papers, from how to brainstorm to which documentation style to use to which introductory and ending methods to use, formatting variations exist. The writer always needs to clarify with the person who gave the assignment what is acceptable and expected. Here we'll discuss the more basic general formatting information and decisions that you will need to make. Let's start with the paper. Generally, 8.5 by 11-inch white paper is preferred, but you'll need to decide what paper quality you use. The higher the rag content, the heavier and the more expensive the paper. Or maybe you want to use environmentally friendly paper, plain white paper or an off-white shade. Print on only one side or both sides. Just remember that the reader's first impression may be formed by these paper decisions. What font should you use? Believe it or not, the font you choose for your paper can affect your reader's impression and your final grade. The font you select should be easy to read, both in appearance and size. Cursive fonts are generally hard to read. 11 or 12-point Times New Roman, Arial, or Courier are some of the best fonts to use for your paper. Now what about the margins? Typically, the margins are adjusted based on if and how the paper is bound. Standard margins are 1 inch on all sides with a few exceptions. 1/2 inch should be added on the left for a left-bound paper and on the top for a top-bound paper. Are you going to include a title page? Although it's not essential unless your instructions specifically said to include one, it can give a good first impression. The title page should include the title of the paper, your name, the course, the instructor, and date. Adding the words prepared by, prepared for, and date is usually considered superfluous and discouraged. Let's look at this example. If no title page is included, then one common style is to begin 1 inch from the top of the first page and include the same information that would have been on the title page. Type your name flush against the left margin. On the next line, your teacher's name, then your course information on the next line, and finally the date on the last line. Some people prefer that a blank line be used between each of the items. Others prefer no extra spaces. You may be required to also include the name of your school. After the date, then double space and center the title of your paper. Even though all the information is important, the order in which it's given may vary from class to class, instructor to instructor. Be sure to clarify if a certain order is required. Look at these two examples. Notice that the title is not in all caps, is not underlined, is not in quote marks, and has no end punctuation mark. All important words are capitalized, but prepositions for, in, and on, for example, and conjunctions and or are usually not capitalized. Another format topic is page numbering. Generally, for the common left-bound papers, your pages are numbered consecutively throughout the essay in the upper right-hand corner, flush with the right margin and 1/2 inch from the top, with Arabic numbers 1, 2, 3. Some formats, MLA for example, recommend that your last name be added before the page number. Do not add anything to the page number such as a P, the word page, or parentheses around the number. Papers are usually double-spaced and each new paragraph is indented 5 spaces. Also, word processing programs give you the choice of left, right, or full justification or centering. Left justification is generally preferred. Each line will be even at the left margin but ragged at the right margin. Generally, only newspapers or magazine articles use full justification, which means both the left and right margins are even. Even deciding how the paper should be submitted must be analyzed. Stapled in the upper left-hand corner, a left-bound folder, loose pages in a pocket folder, punch hole binder, each page in a plastic sleeve. As always, there is no correct answer. Although not unanimous, loose pages, hole-punched, and plastic sleeves are generally not preferred. What is unanimous is that the paper itself and how it is submitted should show professionalism. Ernest Hemingway said, "It's none of their business that you have to learn to write. Let them think you were born that way." So now I hope you've learned that what has to happen between not having even a general idea for your research paper and submitting a polished, well-researched, well-written final project. Knowing all those steps and stages and realizing the time and effort involved can be overwhelming and probably won't make you eager for that next research paper project. But it may help you make the task easier, therefore less stressful. However, you need to keep the big picture in mind. As the cliché says, at the end of that writing tunnel. Then chunk each separate stage or part into smaller, more manageable elements. In addition, give yourself enough time to focus on each step. If you have been able to choose a topic of interest to you, you might not only be able to produce that high-quality final paper, but also you might even actually enjoy learning more about your topic and appreciate having a research paper writing process to follow. Knowing what to do and how to do it in a logical sequence can help you avoid that overwhelming, disorganized feeling and the dread of having to complete a research paper. So what steps will you take next? That's up to you. Maybe you want to learn more about all the research sources and the pros and cons of each. Maybe you know that you need more practice on mechanics, so when you revise you can more easily identify those grammar and punctuation errors. Or you might want to pursue a more detailed investigation of the various types of research papers. You might want to find a checklist that will remind you of and help guide you through each step. Samples of writing checklists are plentiful. Or maybe even devise one adapted from the examples you find that works for you and your specific needs. If you have a previously written research paper, you might analyze it objectively based on the information in this course and note what changes, both process and writing, you would now make. The next step is to continue to write those research papers that make people say, "You must be a natural-born writer." Only you know the time and effort involved in being that natural-born writer.